Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sherry Mayberry, and I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to join us today. On the line, you also have Beth Smith, who's going to be conducting the training today. And we're going to try to move as quickly as possible out of respect for your time in your day. But I did want to just let you know that if you are having any difficulties with audio, if you've got a headset that you use with your phone, you can plug it into your computer. Sometimes that helps. Or if you can even dial in with the audio information that's on your screen and use your phone and headsets there, then if you have a question, we know that you can talk with us directly so that everyone else can hear. Without that headset either plugged into your phone or your computer, it's going to be very difficult. Well, we can't hear you if we unmute you once we get to the section of we're sharing and participating together. But anyway, again, thank you. And Beth's going to introduce herself and to also introduce Whiz Education to you and give you a little bit of background. And we're going to proceed with our training today. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful Tuesday. My name is Beth Smith. I'm one of the partners of Whiz. I'm also the person that writes the curriculum. Sometimes that's challenging, depending on what our unit is. So if you have any questions in particular about the content of the curriculum, I would be the person to ask. Just a quick background on Whiz. Whiz was founded several years ago because we felt there was a desperate need in the marketplace for a curriculum designed specifically for family child care providers. Our largest challenge came when we did our test market in how we could create a curriculum that was economical. That was number one, addressed all ages, and was meant to be used in a home setting and not a center. So after several renditions and several test markets, we came up with what we have today. That being said, because we are a digital curriculum, we can change things at the drop of a hat, and we have over the years. We take customer feedback very seriously. We have had a lot of great ideas come from our customers, and also quality specialists that work with providers. One of the most common questions that we get that we're working on right now, which has been a challenge, is Spanish. I know it's going to come up. Is this available in Spanish? The answer right now is no, but we are working on it. The teaching guides tend to be about 30-plus pages in length, and there's 2 of them every month. So as you can imagine, that's a lot of content to translate. So we're trying to find an economical way to do that because obviously we don't want to increase the cost of the curriculum. So it is something we are working on because we've been asked it over and over again. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to go through some of the parts and pieces of Whiz Education and explain what they are, explain the philosophy behind the curriculum, explain how we address all 10 developmental areas, explain how we align to state and national standards. I'm going to stop frequently, as Sherry mentioned earlier, to take questions. You can raise your hand. We can try to unmute you so you can ask them so everybody can hear. You also have the option at all times of typing questions into the question box, because then when I stop, Sherry can read those questions to me and I can try to answer them as best I can. If I don't know the answer, I'll get back to you. So where we are right now is we're on the homepage for gwizeducation.com. Like I said, we are a digital curriculum, so everything we do, everything we supply lives right here on our website. And there were a number of reasons we chose to go digital. One of the biggest ones was it's economical to do it that way. We don't have to print. We don't have to ship. It also enables us to be very flexible for providers. For instance, some providers will actually print out their lesson plans and put them in a binder or staple them into a booklet. Others will just view them on their tablet or their computer. Even our family notes and things like that are PDF files, so providers don't have to print them out. They can send them as an attachment to an email to save printing costs, as well as paper, which we all know ends up under the car seat. So there were several reasons why we chose to do this, and it's obviously put us ahead of the curve in many instances with providers who are not completely computer literate or who may not know exactly how to, for instance, download a PDF and save it. But we've also found that over time that has changed and that more and more providers are becoming more digitally literate, and more states are also providing information to their providers through the digital model. So even though it put us a little bit ahead of the curve, we feel like we're kind of on the right track there because that's the way things are going. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go under our product, and I'm going to go to our user's guide. Our user's guide is like our training manual. It's an extensive booklet. It's about 60-some pages in length, and it talks a lot about not just what's in the curriculum. That's actually a very minor part of this. It's more about things like the role of the provider, what is an anecdotal note, how do you do a reflection, what tools does GWIZ provide to help with individualization, the 10 developmental areas. So it's a wonderful resource. And there was a document that we put up at the beginning of this webinar that you are welcome to download, which is sort of a step-by-step guide. If you were going to do a training session on GWIZ with providers, it's exactly how I would do it if I was live doing it with your providers. And as part of that, we go through the user's guide because it's very important for them to understand the content that's in there and also how important that content is. So that said, I'm going to click on this user's guide and open it up. Most everything we do on the GWIZ website are PDF files, so as long as providers have Acrobat Reader on their machine, they should be fine. And I'm going to show you right here is a table of contents. There are several sections: your role, individualization and authentic assessment, developmental areas and learning indicators, philosophy, research, and more, and implementing the GWIZ curriculum. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some time to go through the sections, but I'm not going to take an excessive amount of time because we also want to be very cognizant of your time. So I want to spend some time in the lesson plans because there's a lot of really important features in there that I want to point out. So we will go through this rather quickly, but this is something that is available to everyone, whether they're a customer of GWIZ or not. You just go to our website, go to this tab, and this can be downloaded, saved, printed, whatever. It's not just for GWIZ customers. We felt the content was applicable to any family child care provider, and that's why we kept it that way. So I talked a little bit about why we're different. And we're going to get into more details on that. I think probably the number one thing that people wanted when we did our test market was they wanted a curriculum that had all ages in it because their budgets are tight. They don't have time or money to buy multiple ages of curriculums. And so that was our challenge of how do we do that? You know, how do we address everybody from a baby to a school ager? And when we get into lesson plans, we'll show you how we go about that in the GWIZ curriculum. These are just some testimonials. And then the first section is really for the provider talking about their role. And there are four things we talk about in this section: questioning, modeling language, teachable moments, and ongoing training and self-assessment. These are all things that we feel are very important, and we feel they're so important we built them into the curriculum. The first one is asking questions. Asking children open-ended questions is so important because it helps to build that back and forth conversation with children and leads the provider in different directions in terms of, you know, where is their learning going? Where do they want it to go? How can I help support that? So this section about asking questions is really just simply why is it important to ask open-ended questions? And as part of GWIZ, we do webinars on other topics besides just training on the curriculum. And one of those we did was the importance of asking open-ended questions. The second section is modeling language, and that's super important, especially for those that are working with children who are nonverbal, because when you model language, it's the best way for them to absorb it. And I tell them when I do the training for providers, I'll say, look, you know, your babies, your toddlers, they're not going to engage in a conversation with you, but your older children will, and your younger ones will learn by listening to that conversation. They will also learn by you just talking about what they're doing and describing their actions and then what happens. That's cause and effect. Teaching intentionally is super important, and this is where I talk about how important it is to understand the why behind what you do. That's another webinar we do, the why behind experiences. I often say, if you don't know why you're doing something, you probably shouldn't be doing it. And so we have tools within the curriculum to help providers learn why they're doing activities with children. What goals do they hope to achieve? What objectives are there? What skills are the children going to develop? And that's all part of the curriculum and the lesson plans. This just talks about what a teachable moment is. We actually have a short video on our website about teachable moments. And then ongoing training and self-assessment. I talked a little bit about the why behind the experiences, and we're going to get into that in more detail in just a little bit here. We also do an introduction to GWIZ training webinar for providers, and there is a flyer attached to this webinar that you can download about our next provider training, which will be on May the 17th at 7:30 Eastern Daylight Time. You're welcome to share that flyer with the providers that you work with. You're also welcome to post it on your website, Facebook page, whatever you want to do. We do occasionally max out, so if you want your providers to attend, the sooner you get that information in their hands, the better. But it is a webinar that we also record and we keep on our website at all times. So if they can't make the training, they can always listen to the recording. We also have a tool called a monthly provider review sheet, which is a way for the provider to step back at the end of each unit and think about, okay, what did the children enjoy the most? Why do I think they enjoyed that the most? If I did this unit again, what would I do differently? What other activities would I add? What ones wouldn't I do that were not popular with the children? It's so important for them to step back at the end of each unit and reflect on themselves and their teaching about what went well, what didn't go well, and what they could do differently the next time. The next section deals with individualization and authentic assessment. A lot of times we get asked, okay, what kind of formal assessment tool is attached to GWIZ? Do you have a formal assessment tool? The answer to that, in short, is no, we do not. And the reason for that is when we created GWIZ, we decided what we were going to do is align to the state and national standards for early childhood education. And in doing that, we also discovered, well, we need to address all 10 developmental areas. So we figured if we address all 10 developmental areas and we align to state standards, it really wouldn't matter which formal assessment tool a provider chose to use because they're going to be covering the skills and content that they need to cover regardless of which assessment they pick. So we have providers that use GOLD, we have providers that use ages and stages, we have providers that use all different kinds of assessment and find that their children do very well because they're covering the things that they should be covering. They're scaffolding their learning in ways that they should be, and so they do quite well. But that being said, we also believe very strongly that it's important for providers to understand what authentic assessment is, meaning anecdotal notes, observations, and reflections, and that's what this section is all about. So in this section, we talk about individualizing the curriculum first. We have a tool in our curriculum called the Individualization Web, and I'll show you what that looks like. And we view individualization as a 5-step approach where you observe, you reflect, you plan, you do, and then you reflect again. And this section of the user's guide talks about each one of those steps. Like, what do you do when you're observing and recording? What do you do when you reflect on those observations? Then how do you plan the experiences? What does that mean? And then finally, you do the experiences and then you reflect again. So this section talks about that 5-step approach, and actually this entire section of the user's guide could be a webinar. In fact, it's probably going to be the next one that we do for providers, that's for our customers, about anecdotal notes and observations because it's so important. This page talks about what an anecdotal note is. When I wrote this page, I wrote it such that I hoped that the average person could understand what an anecdotal note is. Because I remember in college how tough it was to write anecdotal notes and not put your feelings in there and not put what you think is happening in there, but just to record what you see, what you hear, and what happens. And so when I do talk about anecdotal notes with providers, I explain it's kind of like being a camera, right? A camera doesn't say, oh, they're happy. A camera says they have a smile on their face. And so this talks about what it means to record an anecdotal note and gives them an example of what an anecdotal note looks like. Then the next page talks about reflections. So you do your anecdotal notes, so what? What do you do with them? This talks about how you go back over your anecdotal notes and you think about, okay, what did I learn by doing this anecdotal note? And then you go on to the next step, which is planning based on those. And we have a tool called the Observe and Reflect Grid, which they can use to do their anecdotal notes and then also their reflections and their planning. There's a blank copy of this grid, in this user's guide. I'll show you where, and anyone is welcome to utilize that with their children as a tool. We also put a blank individualization web in here. Now, each unit that we do has one that's tailored to the unit, but there's also a blank one, so if they're doing their own unit or they're doing something different, they can continue to do the individualization web. Then this section talks about putting all of that into place. You know, how do you tie all of that together with the GWIZ curriculum if you're using that? Here's the blank observe and reflect grid that I talked to you about. And here's a sample one filled out. So they get an idea what it means to do an observation, to reflect on the observation, and then to plan based on what they've observed. And then the second part of that is the individualization web. Again, the blank one they can use anytime they want, and a sample one of those filled out. Now this one was tailored to a unit we did called I Am Special. These were the topics we were covering. And this shows you how you could take our unit of I Am Special and tie it into a child's interest, in this case, vehicles. You could also use this tool to help address a child's individual needs. Let's say they're having issues with fine motor, or maybe they're language delayed. You could use it for that purpose. You could use this really for anything that you want to tailor the curriculum to, whether it be a special need, whether it be an interest, whatever. And this just shows them what it looks like when it's filled out. All right, I'm going to pause right there, have a drink of water, and see if there are any questions I can answer right now up to this point.
If you have a question, if you click your hand, it'll tell me that you have a question and we can try to unmute you. Amy Willis has her hand raised. I'm not sure if she's got a question, but I can try to, and honestly, and if you don't have a headset, we will not be able to hear you. Amy? Is this Amy? Amy? Amy, we can hear you, I believe. Do you have a question? Maybe not. Anyway, I know that we're, Amy? Okay, let me scroll down and see if anyone else has got a question. And you can also type the questions in, which is sometimes an easier way to do it, but I don't see any questions typed in. But if your hand is raised and I can unmute you, we can hear you, and if you've got that headset. And anyway, Amy, if you have one later, you can just type it under the question. I think we're good, Beth.
Okay, I'm going to keep on going then. All right, the next section of the user's guide is about our developmental areas and learning indicators. And like I said earlier, we cover 10 different developmental areas in the GWIZ curriculum, and they're right here on this wheel. We view each one as equally important, and you will see when we get into the lesson plans exactly how we show providers that there's no such thing as just an art or creative arts activity, or there's no such thing as just a literacy knowledge activity, that every activity that you do touches on many of these different areas. So we'll get into that in the lesson plans. But this section basically walks them through what is language development and what does it look like. You also see these little symbols. These little symbols become very important in our lesson plans because when you see that little symbol, you know that the activity addresses language development. This talks about, in the blue box, what it is and then what it looks like on the right. And we have a page for each area. So the 10 areas that we do are language development, literacy knowledge, math knowledge, science knowledge, logic and reasoning, approaches to learning, social studies knowledge, social and emotional development, and that also includes character education, by the way. And the character education traits we cover within the curriculum are responsibility, respect, kindness, and honesty. Creative arts, that includes things like music and dance, as well as dramatic play. And physical development and health, which also encompasses nutrition, safety, both fine and gross motor skills, healthy habits, all those things. So then what we did, we're like, okay, what are we going to do with all this? So here you're going to see our learning indicators. In the back of each teaching guide, and I will show you what this looks like, there's a grid. By activity, it says specifically, using these codes over here, what skills are addressed if you choose to do that experience. So you know, for instance, if you see something and it says LD2, you know that it did understands, and then uses an ever-increasing vocabulary. Again, you'll see these picture symbols just to help the providers tie language development to what I call that little speech bubble. So there's 2 pages for the 10 different developmental areas, and those are all the different skills. Now, on our alignment charts to the state standards, these are the codes we would use. So SE1, SE2, CA1, CA2, you'll see those on the charts that we did for the states. and I will show you where that is as well. And then this is how we put it all together. So we do not date our lesson plans. We wanted it to be flexible. So we leave it open, and there's 10 days in each unit, so a total of 20 days between the 2 units for a month. We have the unit name, we have the focus, and then this is a cumulative list. So at the top of the page for the day, if you did all of the experiences that were planned for that day, you would cover all these different developmental areas. Then in the pink box down here as an example, that would be an example of what you might see on a specific experience, and this would be the areas you would address during that experience. We also have this, if it's a gross motor activity, this can be taken outside, and then CE is for our character education. So we use a lot of pictures to help providers make links. The next section is about our philosophy, research, and more. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time in here because obviously you can read it on your own, but our philosophers we base the curriculum on are Piaget, Vygotsky, Erickson, and Slomansky. We also looked at a lot of research based on early childhood education as well as position statements when we created the curriculum. As of this date, we have not done any formal evidence-based assessment because we are new, but we've had a lot of anecdotal feedback from quality specialists across the country in different realms who have said that they have seen that this has really helped providers and that the children are the ultimate benefactor of that, but also that the providers are becoming better providers. I know we have one in Ohio, for instance, that works with Early Head Start. That was the feedback we got from them. So we do hear from them, but we have not gotten to the point yet of doing any type of research base on this. We are approved in several states: Florida, Pennsylvania, Minnesota, North Carolina. We're in Illinois. It's listed as a resource and an aligned resource, I guess they call it. Same thing in Ohio. And there are several others that we're kind of in the process of. So if you're from a state where you know that they're getting ready, I know Tennessee is in the process right now of working to create a list of approved curriculums. So if you're in that realm and you want to let us know, we would be more than happy to follow up and do whatever we need to do to have the people at the state level look at what we do. This is a page about developmentally appropriate practice, just to remind providers of what it is and how they can remember to be developmentally appropriate. And then in the next section, we get into implementing the curriculum. So in this section, we talk about the different uses, different components, and how they're meant to be used. And I'm going to really not spend a lot of time here because we're actually going to go into the curriculum itself, but I want to show you what's in here. So this is just how they would get started. This explains each one of the components, the teaching guides, and an example of what a lesson plan looks like with call-out so they can remember. And we're going to go through this in a second on a much bigger screen. And then story props, the printable puppet, the teaching tool, which is like a manipulative. Make-it sheets are totally optional, not written in at all. Again, they are mainly meant to be a tool that can then be sent home. For instance, this is a lotto game that they could play to help build visual discrimination skills with and language with their parents or caregivers at home. The family letter, like I mentioned, that is digital and can be downloaded and sent via PDF. The individualization web. Digital family notes, which are similar to a picture. They're a JPEG. So providers can download them and save them, and then they can even be texted to parents. They're very simple things that they can do to reinforce the unit at home. An All About My Week report is a way for providers to step back and think about each individual child and then send this information home on a Friday to the parents or caregivers. We encourage them to make a copy of it as well to put in the child's portfolio. Gives them a running record of what they've been interested in, what they're learning how to do, what they're getting really good at, what they're just beginning maybe to try. We do, like I said, webinars for our customers. We also have some freebies for our customers that are not available to others. We have things on our website, however, that are available to others, such as our developmental checklists, which were created by the CDC. And I'm going to show you where all those freebies are because they're open to everyone, whether you're a customer or not. This talks about how you can adapt the curriculum. Materials to collect. We are very cognizant of the fact that these people are in their homes and not in a center. So we use a lot of things that you would have around the house that you don't need to go buy, such as clothes baskets and paper bags and paper plates and plastic bowls and wooden spoons and those kinds of things. But these are things like consumables that we use all the time, the things you would normally think of: paint, paper, crayons, markers, even things like zipper top bags or sponges, those kind of things. Recipes to help save some money for cooked Play-Doh, bubble solution, washable finger paint, and baking clay. Some tips and tricks of ways you can do things maybe in a fun kind of way. And then our outline. And I'm going to skip to the second page because we've already covered all of our first page. You will note that our outline does not have letters, numbers, colors, shapes tied in like a color of the month, number of the month, shape of the month. And that is very intentional. It does not mean we do not do those things. Letters, letter sounds, beginning reading, literacy skills are incorporated into the lesson plans, and I'll show you how we do that so that it's meaningful to children. We do have a unit on colors, and we have, I think this year we did a combined unit of colors and shapes. We do one about math, but it's more about how math is a part of our world. And again, numbers and recognizing numerals, counting, all of that is built into the lesson plans, but we do it in a way that's part of the activities where it just fits naturally. So hopefully that makes sense. So that takes us to the end of the user's guide. Does anybody have any questions about that? Because the next thing I'm going to do is go into our sample unit and into the teaching guide, which I believe I emailed to most everybody who wanted to be part of this webinar. So you should have it. It was for the unit of boxes, blankets, and balls, or blankets, boxes, and balls, or some combination of those three.
Beth, the questions that have been coming in are mainly around the states that we're approved in, and two that are mentioned were Colorado and West Virginia, which I know that we have not submitted the program in those states. But just for a general statement, if you know that your state is in the process of approving a program for the family child care provider, please let us know, like if you know anything about what the who's doing this approval process or any of the steps, who we can contact to find out how to get on that list for the approval process. But so those were good questions. It's just that there's 50 states and just so few of us that we're trying to keep up, but we're moving as quickly as we can. Let's see, are there any other questions? Anyway, all around the state approval process, but it sounds like we've got a couple of people saying that they'll look into it and let us know in their particular state, which would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, it's like Sherry said, it's so hard when there's 50 different states and 50 different approval processes and 50 different timelines. And I mean, it's really tough for us to keep up with it all. So absolutely, you can reach out to me. I'm B as in boy Smith at gwizeducation.com, or Sherry is S Mayberry at gwizeducation.com. Those are our personal emails with GWiz, so that's the best way to get a hold of us. But if you send us the information about, the submission process, we will definitely look into it. We're more than happy to. So all I did when I left that was just close that window where I had the user's guide open, and I went back to our home page. And I'm going to scroll down now to sort of kind of like the middle of our page where it says try our free sample. We do have a free sample available on our webpage to anyone who would like to try it. That's also very intentional because we believe that it's important for providers to try a curriculum before they commit to it. Or the other option we have is you can subscribe, and we offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, so they're not locked in. They get 2 weeks in, they're like, this is never going to work for me. I can't figure this out. They just need to let us know, and we'll refund their money. We want them to be happy. That's really important. I mean, providers are not going to use a curriculum if they don't like it, period. End of discussion. So that said, I'm going to go into the free sample. And I'm going to scroll down here, and here's the guide that I sent to each of you for the sample unit. This is actually a unit we did last June, and it's a great one for a sample unit because it's something you can do any time of year. It uses a lot of things you're going to have around, but it's also a lot of fun. So every teaching guide, like I said, is somewhere between 30 to 35 pages. It just really depends on how many songs and poems I have to put in the back, if I give them any goodies, as I call them, in the back, and also if there's a story in there. So this one has an introduction. They always have an introduction. This box up here in red, and I'm going to just make this a little bit smaller so we can see that, is anything they need to collect ahead of time. So this just says you're going to need all kinds of boxes and you're going to need all kinds of balls, so start gathering them now. And if they didn't know it, the USPS will send you free boxes. All you have to do is go online and order them. They'll deliver them right to your door. So any helpful tips that I can give providers like that, I put it in here. So there's the link right to the USPS store so they can go there and order boxes if they want to. It just has a little overview of what the unit's going to be about, table of contents, and then down here we have those picture codes. So when we get into the daily lesson plans, if they forget, for instance, what does that heart mean? What area of development is that? They can look back here and see. We also remind them what the character education, the sunshine, and the get moving mean as well. And then here is a page that has the whole unit, all the activities that are going to be done, in addition down the bottom of the school age. Some providers will print this out and then display it for parents so they kind of have an idea of what's planned for the next 2 weeks, basically. All right, and then I'm going to go on to the first day of lesson plan. So up here, again, we have the unit name, we have the focus of the day, and a cumulative list of all the developmental areas that would be addressed if you did all the activities that are planned. So for today, if you did them all, you'd have social and emotional, language, physical development and health, approaches to learning, social studies, science knowledge, creative arts, literacy knowledge, and logic and reasoning. Then in this box, we always have a health and safety tip. We also have a teaching tip, and we also have a transition idea. And the transition idea is something they can use anytime during the day to help move the children both physically and mentally from one activity to another that ties in with the content of the day. In our blue box, we have today's vocabulary and ways to model language. Now, I tell providers, when you see these words, package, mail carrier, deliver, tape, cardboard, are we going to print them on index cards and practice them as vocabulary words? No. We want you to use those words in conversations with children. Why? And I explained to them why. Because the more you talk to children, the wider their vocabulary will be. Even if they're nonverbal, they're still absorbing language. And as they absorb that language, then when they are ready to talk, they will know what cardboard is, and they will know what a package is. So that's why we have that box there. In the blue box, we have our Exploring Together experience. We used to call this circle time. Here's another example of how we changed. And then it just dawned on me as I'm writing it, this is really not circle time where the teacher's talking and they're all listening. This is really a time when they're exploring together with the provider, and so hence we changed the name. So this is a time when everyone can be together. Even the infants and the babies, if they're awake, can listen again and watch, because why not? In this one, we're introducing our puppet friend, who's Max the mail carrier. He's bringing a surprise in a box. She's talking through the puppet. They're guessing what's in the box. They shake it. They listen. They make predictions. But what's really important, and this is really important for all of the experiences, and I'm going to make this a little bigger so you can see it, is this first bullet point right here. Every experience that Whiz does in the first bullet explains the why behind it. So, for instance, if you look at the last sentence, during the course of this experience, the children will use clues to solve a riddle, build both expressive and receptive language skills, and utilize their senses to make discoveries. Is that everything they're going to do? No, but that's some of the highlights of the experience. They have this up here to show them exactly what areas they're going to develop. Language, social emotional, science, physical development, logic and reasoning, social studies, math, and approaches to learning. So I'll show you in the back where the chart is. It's going to detail the specific skills. But again, those picture codes are a reminder that when you do this experience, you're not just addressing one area of development. You're addressing many. Over here, you'll see our questions. And again, back to that importance of asking questions to engage children in conversations, to build vocabulary, to model language, do all those wonderful things. These are not an end-all, obviously, but our goal is if we keep putting a lot of questions here and they keep seeing these questions, maybe they'll start asking those questions and they'll ask more on their own and continue to build language and have that conversation keep going even after the experience is over. Sometimes our Exploring Together will have an extension. This one happens to be something quite simple. Count the number of pieces of mail received and record this information on a simple graph. Every day you get the mail out of the mailbox. Every day there's a certain number of pieces of mail. So it's a simple way for them to tie learning about what a mail carrier does, and it comes in, maybe it'll come in a box, maybe it'll come in an envelope, maybe it'll be who knows what in the mailbox. So it's a great way to tie all that together. That's the first page of day one. Here's the second page of day one. So day one has 2 pink box activities, and these are for toddlers through 4-year-olds. If we feel that it needs to be leveled, in other words, if we feel that your toddlers and 2s can do it in a slightly different way than your 3s and 4s, or maybe even your toddlers, 2s, and young 3s, as is in this case, we detail that out. And I reinforce when I do training that is not an age as much as it is a developmental level. And I say that, it says right here, developmental level. So in other words, you might have a 2-year-old that's functioning like a toddler, or you could have a 2-year-old that's functioning more like a high 3. So this enables the provider to do one activity, but to adapt it to different developmental levels. So not every experience is leveled, because not every experience needs to be. For instance, the one opposite here, box artist, it didn't need to be leveled, but this one we felt did. So we just basically will do that where we feel it needs to be done. And again, this first bullet explains the why. You have the picture codes to designate what developmental levels, and you have the questions. Same thing over here. You have the question, you have the developmental areas, and then you also have how to do the experience with the why right here. We always have something for advanced preschoolers. Sometimes that's lumped in here, sometimes it's not. Like this one, for instance, we talked about literacy. Here we're going to point out pre-printed words on the boxes. Can the children read any of the words? Do they recognize any letters? Meaningful time to talk about letters and words because they're printed on a box, instead of doing them in isolation. And then our purple experience. Our purple experience is for babies, because infants need their own experiences. And so this is a one-on-one experience that the provider can do with an infant. It doesn't necessarily mean that it'll be just with the infant. Obviously, if another child wants to join in, that's perfectly fine. We have experiences here. We might even include something like a song to sing while you're diapering. We might make something to hang over the diapering area to keep the children's attention, the baby's attention while you change diapers. We might have a tummy time experience. It could be a wide variety of things, but it's something specifically for the infants. So that is one day of a GWIZ lesson plan. I'd like to pause just briefly to see if we have any questions before I scroll through quickly and go to the school age experience. There's 10 days just like this, so 2 pages for each day.
Okay, if you raise your hand, I will, again, try to unmute you, or you can type in your questions. And I've been answering most of the questions as they're coming in. So if you've got some new questions, go ahead and type them now. Again, we're still more questions about the state process, but I think a lot of people are going to try to give us information as to where to go with that. So I'm going to go back to you have to go 2 different places to look at this. I see no hands raised. Check the questions one more time. Okay, here's one. In the beginning of the webinar, you mentioned documentation sent out to help us with the training, to help us train the providers. Can you please repeat that? Also, where can I find it? Actually, it's one of the downloads up on the top right-hand corner. If you see there's 2 PDF files. It says handouts. You should be able to click on both of those. One is the webinar flyer about the next webinar on May 17th, and the other is the training session outline for you to use if you wanted to use it with providers you were working with. So you can click that right there, but it's also on our homepage under the, gosh, Beth, I can't get to that page.
I think it's under
a tab for...
I'll go there.
Go ahead.
I'll go there after we're done doing this. I'll take you where that is, because there's other things there they might want as well. So yeah, we'll go there
so
next.
Those 2, under those 2 handouts, that's the information about the outline for training and the webinar.
All right, everybody can just close their eyes while I scroll through here. So there's 10 days of experiences, just like the one we went through, and then we get into the school age experiences. And we were asked begged practically to make sure we put school-age experiences in here. We debated on about whether or not to do so, but we had so many people say, oh, yes, please do, that we did. And so there are 6 experiences for school-age children. They're laid out in a similar fashion. The concepts would just be at a higher level. The questions would be at a higher level. And then each one has this part that says extend for another day, because most of these experiences can be carried over from one day to the next or even multiple days depending on the experience. And that's because school-age children are older and they can mentally do that, start an activity one day and pick up where they left off the next day. So there are 6 of these. There's 2 on each page. And again, these would be designed for those children that come after school, or maybe they have them during the summer as well. 6 different ones. Like here you can see measuring circumference. So obviously we're doing things where they're learning, but we're doing it in a fun way. And also a lot of outdoor games and active games, because after sitting in school all day, they need to move around. If this was the first unit, right here before the directions for the Make It sheets, you would find a 2 to 3 pages that has the preparation directions for the story props, which could be flannel board pieces, stand-up props. It could be a scene that we're going to use, and then the text for the story that goes with it. The first unit of each month has an original story, and then the second month has a teaching tool, or the second unit has a teaching tool instead. Here again are the Make It sheets, which are totally optional. These are not written into the lesson plans in any way, shape, or form. Providers can choose to use them if they feel they're appropriate for the children who are ready to do them. For instance, that what would you ship, where they're going to cut out pictures from a magazine and put them in a box and then dictate what they would ship. Again, a way to tie in letters, letter sounds, and writing. Then we have advanced preschooler experiences. This takes that whole letter writing, creative writing for the children who are getting ready to go to kindergarten, maybe even some of the school leaders that need some practice, as well as some more advanced math concepts. They can use these if they have children who are ready for them and they feel would benefit. And here's that grid I was telling you about. So for instance, on the first day, special delivery, if the provider chose to do that experience, they would cover all these different skills, and you would need to go back to the user's guide to see exactly what LD1, LD2, LD3, LD4, etc. are. But this grid on this page has all of the experiences on the 10 days, and then the skills for the school-age experiences, because they just didn't fit, are on this second page. We also offer a book list, and that's so they can go to the library and they can gather books that relate to the unit that we're doing. And then if this unit happened to have any songs or poems that just didn't fit within the context of the lesson plans, they would be found back here as well. The teaching tool for this one is a patterning manipulative, and it gives directions on how to prepare that. And then because this is the second unit that has the teaching tool, it also has our puppet friend, Max. So the first unit has a story prop, and the second unit has a teaching tool and a puppet. And then at the end of all of this, if there's anything else that I can give them that I think would make their life easier, I'll put it back here. For instance, I'm working on a farm unit, and I'm giving them a bunch of sheep on a sheet that they can cut apart and hide. They can tape them to boxes and then hide them outside or hide them inside, and they can find the lost sheep. So if there's anything I can give them that would make their life easier, this is where I would put it at the end of the guide. To save money, providers can do lots of things. They can print it in black and white or grayscale. If they have a printer that prints double-sided, they can do that. They don't even have to print it at all. Like I said, some providers will just view it on the screen and don't even bother printing out their lesson plans. That said, one of the most important things that we do tell them is they need to download and save all these files to a place where they will have a backup. So save it to their computer, but also save it to the cloud, save it to a flash drive, save it to an external hard drive, somewhere else so they don't lose it in case their computer crashes. And I'm going to show you that in a minute. So if they want to try the sample, all the parts and pieces they need are here. So if they wanted to download the teaching tool, they just click, it opens up, and they print it out and prepare it. Same thing for if you scroll down, you have your individualization web, your monthly provider review sheet, your family letter, which again can be just emailed to parents, all about my week report, the digital family notes, and the Make It sheets. And here's your puppet. So what I want to do is I want to go up here, though, to the top of the page, and this is, you see it says sign out. I'm already signed in. I'm pretending I'm a customer. So if I was a customer, I would sign in, and I would come over here to this much units, and I want to show you where the actual ones are. Now, this is important. So if you are with a CCR in our agency, and you are a quality specialist, and you have providers who are using GWiz, or you would like to have providers using GWiz because you think it would help them, and you would like to have access to what they're doing, we can do that. We can set up a trainer account for you. So you have access to the actual curriculum every month, and you will know what they should be up to. And if you want that option, you just need to email Sherry. Again, it's Mayberry, Mayberry, @gwizeducation.com, and she will need your name, your email, your agency, your position, and then she can set you up an account so that you can get in and see exactly what I'm seeing right now. Because we know that if you're monitoring and you're keeping up with providers, it's important for you to know what they're doing. So our first unit for May is Can You Climb? So all the provider would do would be click download. And if you scroll down, you see a description of the unit. And then to download each component, you would just click download. And then at that point, you could save it. You could print it. My print is up here, so if I wanted to print it, I would click there. If I wanted to save it and download it, I would click it here. And then I would go back out, and I would just go to the story props, and I would do the next thing, same thing, and I would go through all the files like that. Then our second unit for May would be if I go back and I scroll down, it's called Look Up. It's going to be things that fly. And I would do the same thing. I would click download. It will open up a description of the unit as well as all the files that go with it. So it's actually quite simple. We do have a step-by-step tool that can help them work their way through that. I'm not sure, Sherry, where we landed that right now. Is it under training videos and more? Where did we put that?
I'm sorry, I was answering your question. What was your question? Where do we put what?
The step-by-step guide for providers on how to access the curriculum. Is it under support, getting started with GWiz?
I believe so.
Let me check and see.
Okay.
Yes, there's the webinar. There's the user's guide. It's not there.
Well,
we'll need
if
to figure
it's
out
not,
where that,
we can make a note.
Yeah, there's a step-by-step.
Because I email that all the time.
Yeah, it has screenshots, and when they become a customer, I believe they get a link to that document as well, too. But we can make sure it's up there. So that's where customers would go. Now, back to you, and you wanted to know, okay, I want to do this training with my providers to teach them about GWiz and how it's meant to be used. Why GWiz? Information for CCR and early learning specialists. And here we have tools to help you. This is right here where you would go. It's the GWiz training session outline. You just click to download it, and it walks you through how I would, if I was doing a live roughly 2-hour training session on GWiz, how I would do that. And basically, you can do it if they're not customers yet. You can use the sample teaching guide as your tool. But you could also, if they were customers, require them to bring the current teaching guide with them to do it. We also have a link to the user's guide here and a link to that teaching guide right there as well. We have, and this is important, if you want some documentation from providers that they're actually using it the way they're meant to, that is here. We also have an end of the month assessment tool here. So this would be something that you could require them to complete at the end of the month to say, well, I really did use it, and this is what I learned from doing that. It requires them to find specific things within the units and then show that they demonstrate knowledge on how to use the curriculum. So those tools are all there. You do not have to be a customer to access any of this. This is all open to everyone. Also, under FCC tools, everything you find here is free to any of you to use, to share with providers. I'm going to show you just a few of the tools that are here. For instance, let's say you want to help them learn about sample schedules. So here we have a sample schedule that you can download. But in addition to the sample schedule, on the second page of this is a blank one. So maybe you want to do a training on schedules and creating schedules, but then you want them to create your own. You're welcome to use this. There's also, if you scroll down, center labels. Again, all this is PDF files. You just click to open. They can print them out and use them to label their centers. There are also tools up here for parents. There are social and emotional and character education tools, health and nutrition. We even have tools for associations we're working on. Here are the developmental checklists. They start at birth and go to 5, I believe. Disabilities fact sheets, and we also have a blog. So being that we're getting close to 30, and I know your time is valuable, I want to stop and make sure that I answer as many questions as I can. I know I sent out the document ahead of time, and I really appreciate the questions that you submitted when you registered, because that helped me to answer a lot of those ahead of time. But that said, I would love to answer any questions you have right now.
One question that came in is, how many weeks ahead are the next lesson plans? We have the first theme is up usually on the 20th before the month begins. In other words, if we're May 1, the first unit today, that first theme for May went up April 20th. Second theme is usually up by the 25th. So, and then they stay up about 5 days past the month is over with. There was another question around the barriers. If we were able to translate it into Spanish with the tax savvy, their capabilities. And again, that would, right now, if they could read English, most of our directions are right there on our website, and we can send them documentation that walk them step by step. The problem is that I can't speak Spanish and Beth can't, so we don't have a person that can communicate with them directly, but we can provide them documentation right now in English if they could have a translator or someone that would help them. But again, that's a big barrier to get the whole teacher's guide translated. All right, so those were a couple of questions that came in. Let me just look and see if there's any hand, although we haven't been real successful with people speaking out. Let's see. So far, that's it for right now, Beth.
Okay. Well, I just want to show the prices, just so y'all know. It's $18.95 a month, $53.95 for 3 months, or $192.95 for a year. And again, we wanted to keep this extremely economical. So to subscribe, all customers would do would be click the subscribe button, fill out the forms, utilize a credit card, and then it will automatically charge them until they cancel, and they can cancel at any time. And again, if they're not happy after the first month, they can also, within the first 30 days, they can let us know that. Regarding state standards, here's where you go to see your standards. So you just click here, then you scroll to find your standards. For instance, somebody asked about Colorado. I'm going to click on that. It will bring up the PDF, and it shows the Colorado standard. And then, again, you'll see those codes, and the content of those codes is there. Now, that being said, if you are in a state and you don't see an alignment chart, that does not mean we don't align. It just means we probably haven't gotten around to doing it yet. So, or if you're in a state where you know there are new standards or revisions to standards coming, please let us know, because again, we can't keep up with all of this. It gets really complicated. You can also sign up for our newsletter. That is where we let you know of when we post freebies, for instance, or if we have a webinar coming up. So if you want to know what's going on, you can obviously sign up here for our newsletter. We also have a Facebook page where I post that kind of information as well. If you have questions, we have FAQs. Here's some of our blog topics. And we do have an event calendar where we post the dates when the different units will be coming up and going down. Now, that's an important thing. Sherry talked about when they go up. They don't stay up forever, and there's a reason why. If we kept all of the units that we have done in the past many years on our website at one time, it would be so slow it would crash. So each unit stays up for about 45 days. So, for instance, Sherry just said that the first unit of May went up on April the 20th. It will not come down until June the 5th or the 6th. So the habit we like to tell providers to get into is simply when it goes up, download them all, save them to your computer, save them to a flash, save them to the cloud, so that no matter what happens, you know you have them. Even if you don't think you're going to use them right now, they're not dated. You could go using them, like, for instance, Can You Climb? You could do that unit anytime. It doesn't have to be right now. So we encourage them to make sure that they download and save everything, because it will not be available forever. We just can't. It would, like I said, the website would go kerflooey, because the documents are heavy in graphics, as you could see, and that just takes tons of memory and speed.
There was a request, and I'm going to say our email again one more time. It's bsmith, B-S-M-I-T-H, at gwhizeducation.com, or Mayberry, M-A-Y-B-E-R-R-Y, at gwhizeducation.com. But you can also contact either one of us through the Contact Us form. Beth's going to show you Contact Us right there. So if you click there, there's a form you can fill out, and we get that. Actually, that's a really solid way that both of us see it. So if one of us misses it, the other one catches it, and we can make sure that we get answered whatever you need. Let's see. So we went over the email address.
Right, and that's also the place, if you need a certificate for today that you attended the Train the Trainers on GWhiz, if you will use this form to request that, and note in this field right down here exactly how you want your name on there to be, then Sherry can get those to you within the next, week or so.
Yeah. Someone asked if we have a schedule. There is a yearly outline. I'm assuming you're referring to the themes for each month. So there is the outline theme is under our product, and we keep that posted all the time. It's also in the back of the user guide. Let's see. So if that's not what you're referring to as a schedule, then email us later and we'll let you know. So we repeated the emails. We've talked about the update. Oh, there was a question, is the curriculum updated yearly? Yes, it's rewritten all the time. So because of just providers, now doesn't mean we're not going to cover animals again, but we still update the activities and the program that, that it looks fresh and different. Let's see, any more coming in? It's funny, when they start coming in fast, but I think that covers it. You will probably have some questions after we hang up. Please don't hesitate to email either through customer service or one of us your questions, and we'll be glad to answer any of those. If you missed any of the downloads, we can send that to you. And Beth, I believe there's a couple of people that may have missed the handout that you got ahead of time. We'll try to, if you send us an email on that, we'll try to send you that also. With that said, we are really trying to keep it to an hour since it's during your work day. Let's see. Do you say QC with Kentucky all stars? I can set up a training. Okay. That's a question I can deal with offline. And all right. Okay. And someone asked if they allow us to help create themes. We'd love your input on themes. We always have a question answer set, or we do like a survey probably about in June, asking your input about themes and ideas for the next year. So that's when we really like to get that input then. Once the outline is set up, it's hard to go back and change it, but by the summer, you'll be doing it again, right, Beth? We send out that survey and ask them for input and all that kind of stuff.
Well, and anytime we encourage customers, if they have ideas to share, we would love to hear them. I mean, that's the beauty of being digital as well. I mean, you can email us at 2 in the morning. Let's say you wake up at 3 in the morning like I do and can't go back to sleep, and you have some idea you want to share. You can shoot us an email. We'll see it in the morning when we get up, unless, of course, we're awake then, too.
Yeah. So, there was a question, and I want to clarify, the free accounts are for like trainers or the coaches that are working with the providers, not to give access for the providers to use with the program, but it's for you to use as you're working with the providers to make sure they're kind of on track and to answer questions, because you'll know what they're, what to kind of expect as you're in the classroom looking for activities. Okay, if there's nothing else, Kept it right at an hour. And I want to thank you all for coming. Send us questions afterwards, and have a great afternoon. Most of you guys are all the way to the West Coast, so some of you it's still early in the day. Here it's moving on. So anyway, thank you again for coming. Let us know if you have any questions, and appreciate you sharing any of this information with anyone else. This will be recorded, and we can share the recording with you. So thanks again, and Beth, we'll just
thanks,
say good
everybody.
night or goodbye.
really, we're used to this at night. Really appreciate your time, and more than likely, we will be doing this webinar again at a time that's for specialists during the day, because we know it's hard for you guys to attend during the evening. But we'll let you know if you especially if you sign up for our newsletter. It makes it great. You'll know when that's going to happen. But have a good day. We really appreciate your time and your feedback. Bye.
All right. Bye.